We begin today the Gemara on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, the second line from the top. Tana Rabbanon, we learned in the Beitza, Yom Tov Shechali is b'Shabbos. If Yom Tov falls out in Shabbos, Beishamai Yomrim, Beishamai say, Mispalel Shmeina. In the Shmeina Esrei, you have to daven 8 brachas. V'oimer shal Shabbos b'fnei atzma. There's one bracha you say for Shabbos, v'shal Yom Tov b'fnei atzma, and another bracha separately for Yom Tov. In other words, just like in the Shabbos Shmeina Esrei, you always daven 7 brachas, the 3 in the beginning, the 3 in the end, and 1 in the middle. But over here, because it's Yom Tov, so you have to have a separate bracha for Yom Tov in the middle. Beitza will say, Mispal Sheva, you daven 7 brachas, only 1 bracha in the middle, Maschil b'shal Shabbos, and that bracha, you begin with Shabbos, so Messiah b'shal Shabbos, and in the conclusion of the bracha, you mention Shabbos. V'oime kedusha sayayim b'emtza. And you mention the Kedusha of the day, which is the Yontiv in the middle of the bracha. But you don't have to mention Yontiv in the conclusion, in the Baruch Atah Hashem of the bracha. Rabbi says, so Rabbi agrees with Beis Hillel, but he adds more. That you also, when you conclude the bracha, so you have to mention Yontiv there as well. And therefore you say not only Mekadesh HaShabbos, but you also say Yisrael v'azmanim. Tani Tana Kamei de Ravina. There was a Tana that was teaching this halacha in front of Ravina, and he said that Seder of how Rebbe said you should conclude the bracha is Mekadesh Yisrael, the Eibush sanctifies Yidden, and then V'Shabbos V'Azmanim, and then Shabbos, and then Yontif. Amalei, so Ravina said to him, it's the wrong order. Otu Shabbos Yisrael Mekachilei. Shabbos, Yidden are the ones that sanctify it. You're mentioning Yidden before and only afterwards Shabbos. So that sounds like that the Yidden are the ones that sanctify Shabbos. For Shabbos, Mekacha v'kaima. Shabbos is sanctified from Sheshes Yemei Bereishis. The Eibush sanctified Shabbos. Therefore, the right order to say it is Mekadesh HaShabbos. The Eibush sanctifies Shabbos. And then Yisrael. Then you mention the Yidden. The Eibush sanctified Yidden. V'azmanim. And the Yidden are the ones that are Mekadesh l'Chaydish to sanctify the Yom Tov. Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef said, halacha keRebbi. The halacha is like Rebbe, and the Gemara adds, it's Ravina. And like Ravina answered and explained that the Seder is Mekadesh HaShabbos Yisrael v'azmanim. Ton Rabbanon, a similar halacha we learned, Shabbos, Shechol Dias b'Rish Chodesh, or b'Chol Shal Mayit. If you have Shabbos together with Rish Chodesh or in Chol Mayit. So what's the nusach of the davening, of the Shemona Esrei? So Arvis, Shachris, and Mincha. So the 3 tefillas of Ma'ariv, Shachris, and Mincha, Mispal, Sheva, you daven in the Shemona Esrei, 7 brachas, V'oime, Me'ein, Am'ure, Ba'avayda. So you daven a regular Shabbos Shemona Esrei, and you don't mention Yontiv there, but you say Ya'ala v'Yavai, which is the Me'ein Am'ure, or the Me'ein of the Rish Chodesh, or the Yontiv of the Chol Hamoed, in Avayda, which is the bracha of Ritzei, as we do today. That's where we add Ya'ala v'Yavai. Vim lo yomar, and if you did not say Ya'ala v'Yavai, machzir and oisa, yes, to daven again. Rabbi Eliezer says, by da, the place to mention the Rish Chodesh or the Chol Hamoed is by Hayda, in the bracha of Maidim, the same place where we say Ala Nisim. Or b'musafin, when it comes to Musaf, Maschil b'shal Shabbos. So the middle bracha, you start with Shabbos, or Messiah b'shal Shabbos, and you conclude with Shabbos. V'oime kedusha sayayim b'emtza. And you mention the Kedusha of the day, Rish Chodesh, or the Yom Tov in the middle. Rab Shimon v'Gamliel, Rabbi Shmuel ben Eishar, Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika Imrim. So they both said that when it comes to Shabbos together with Rish Chodesh or Chol Hamoed, then Kol Mokim shehuskak l'sheva, any of the tefillas, in other words, all of the tefillas, where you're davening 7 brachas, like a Shabbos Shemona Esrei. So Maschil b'shal Shabbos, you start with Shabbos, the Messiah b'shal Shabbos, and you conclude with Shabbos, and v'oim kedusha sayayim b'emtza. And you also mention the kedusha of the day of Rish Chodesh or Chol Hamoed in middle of the bracha. So it's not enough if you say Ya'ala v'Yavai in Ritzei or the other opinion by Maidim, but you also have to mention Rish Chodesh or Chol Hamoed in the middle bracha. Amar Rav Huna ein halacha ka'osei hazug. The halacha is not like this peer that said that it has to be mentioned in the middle bracha as well. If a person forgot to make an Erev Tchumen before Yontif, and there's 2 days Yontif, so he can make the Erev Tchumen on 1 day of Yontif for the next day of Yontif. Umasne, and he makes the following condition. Okay, so if Yontif is, what we're talking about over here is actually that Yontif fell out on Thursday and Friday, and he wants to have the Erev Tchumen for Shabbos. So he should have made it before Yontif. You're not allowed to make an Erev Tchumen on Yontif itself. you're being misaken something, or it's a kinyan that you have to make. The whole concept of Erev Tchumen is that you go to another place and you kaina shvisa there. You acquire that other place that's where I'm living, and then you can walk from there another 2,000 tamas. So whichever direction you want to go, you have to go and acquire that location for yourself that you're living there. So that you're not allowed to do on Yantif. But because there's 2 days Yantif, you could make the Erev Tchumen umasne, and you do it with a condition. What's the condition that you make? So as Rashi explains, you come the first day Yom Tov and you say that if today is Yom Tov and tomorrow is a weekday, so then I don't have to make the Erev Tchumen today, I'll make it tomorrow. If today is the weekday and tomorrow is Yom Tov, so I'm making the Erev Tchumen now, and then it'll be good for tomorrow and for Shabbos. That's with the Erev Tchumen. And the same thing also, so Reb Chia bar Ashi said that, Rava says, Maniach Adam Eruve Tafshilin mi Yom Tov l'chaverei. If someone forgot to make the Erev Tafshilin, so Yom Tov is on Thursday and Friday, and he forgot to make Erev Tafshilin, so he can make the Erev Tafshilin on these 2 days of Yom Tov, so mi Yom Tov l'chaverei yumasna. And he makes a condition. Right? What's the condition that he makes? If today is Yom Tov and tomorrow is not a Yom Tov, so then I don't need to make any Erev Tafshilin. I can cook tomorrow for Shabbos. It's a Yom Chayil. If today is a Yom Chayil and tomorrow is Yom Tov, so then I'm making my Erev Tafshilin today, and it should be for Shabbos. I should be able to cook tomorrow, which is Yom Tov for Shabbos. So Rava says a similar thing regarding the Erev Tafshilin. The only difference is, by the Erev Tafshilin, on the second day of Yom Tov, you don't have to come and do and make the same condition. Because if the second day of Yom Tov is Chayil, there's no need for an Erev Tafshilin. Whereas by the Erev Tchumen, you have to make this condition. You have to come the first day and do it. And then you have to come on the second day of Yom Tov and do it again. Make the same condition. If yesterday was a Yom Chayil, then I made it yesterday and not today. If today is a Yom Chayil, I'm making it today. But Erev Tafshilin is not required if there's a break of a Yom Chayil between the Yom Tov and the Shabbos. That's what Rashi explains here. But now the Gemara says as follows. Man damar Eruv Tchumen, the one that says that you could do this, make an Erev Tchumen with this condition on Yom Tov, Kol shkein Eruv Tafshilin. He would for sure agree that you could also do the same with an Erev Tafshilin. Man damar Eruv Tafshilin, the one that says that you can make this condition with the Erev Tafshilin, aval Eruv Tchumen loy. But regarding Erev Tchumen, even if you're doing it with this condition, you can't do it. Why are we more stringent with Erev Tchumen? My time, what's the reason? The lemikni shvise b'shabbat loy. Because to make a kinyan in the place, that's the concept of Erev Tchumen, as I explained it before, that you're acquiring that location to live there with the food that you place there, to be able to walk from there, to make that kinyan is not allowed to be done on Shabbos or on Yontif. This Lashon Shabbat here refers to Yontif, even though it's only with a suffix, but nevertheless it's still not allowed. But the Erev Tafshilin, which is not a kinyan, and Rashi says it's also for the covet of being able to have the food for Shabbos, covet Shabbos, so here they were mekel, they were matter. Tan Rabbanon, and Abraisa said, Ein oifin mi Yom Tov l'chaverei. You're not allowed to cook from one day of Yom Tov for the purpose of the other day of Yom Tov. Because if one day is Yom Tov, then the other day is Chayil. If the second day is Yom Tov, then the first day is Chayil. So you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to the next day, which could be like a Yom Chayil. Be'emes amru. In truth, it was said. This is a lashon that means that nobody argues with this. Memale isha kol agdeira basar. A woman is allowed to fill the entire pot with meat, even if she doesn't eat only one piece, because it's one pot and it's no extra tirche involved in this, so you don't have to cook only the exact amount you need for yontif. You can fill the entire pot, and whatever's left over is left over. You can use afterwards. Same, a baker can fill up a whole barrel of water to heat up water, even if you're only using one kitain, one little jug or one little glass. But when it comes to baking, over here you only bake the amount of bread that you need, because each bread is a different piece. It's not one pot, it's not one barrel of water, so therefore bread is different. It's a separate tirch, it's a separate piece of bread. Now the chiddush of our Gemara is, even though when it comes to Shabbos, and it's a case where you're allowed to cook on Shabbos, if it's pekuach nefashos, you're only allowed to cook the exact amount that you need. You're not allowed to be marbe. You're not allowed to add more because I'm anyways cooking, so I might as well put into the pot more. But over here in Yontif, they were more makel. By Yontif, since you're allowed to cook for Yontif, so you're allowed to cook even more. It's the same tirche, it's one pot and the same barrel. So therefore you're allowed to cook it all, even though it's more than what you need. So the Gemara, but Rab Shimon ben Elazar says that even regarding baking bread, memali shakol atana pas, you can fill up the entire oven with bread, even if you only need just one loaf of bread. Mipnei shapas nefes yofe, because the bread in the oven is baked better. Bizman shatana mali, when the oven is full and it contains the heat more. There's not so much space in the oven and it gets hotter, so the bread bakes better. So therefore it's the benefit for the bread that you want to eat, that you should have a full oven. Amar Rave, halache, Rab Shimon ben Elazar. We paskin like Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Even bread you can bake all of it on Yontif. The question was asked, so someone that forgot to make the Erev Tafshilin. Hu nesar, v'kimchei nesar. Does that mean that he is not allowed to cook? But not only the person, but also the flour, the food items that he wants to use to cook or bake with it is also to be used to prepare from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Or perhaps, hu nesar. Now that he didn't make the Erev Tavshilin, so he is not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But ve'en kimchei nesar. The kemach, the flour, the other food items that he has, they're not also to be used. Someone else could use it. As the Gemara here says, Lamai nafkimina. What's the difference? What's the relevance of this question? Laknuye kimchoy la'acherim. To sell his kemach to another person. He has the kemach. He's not allowed to use it to prepare for Shabbos on Yontif. He didn't make the Erev Tavshilin. But could he sell his kemach, or does he have to? Does he have to sell his kemach to someone else? If you're going to say that it's also for him to cook and prepare for Shabbos, and the flour is also to be used, so then he's going to have to sell his kemach to others. He's going to have to actually sell it for someone else to go and do it for him. So you're going to sell it with a kinyan sudar. This is on Yontif now. So you sell it with a kinyan sudar, and they were makel to allow to do this to be able to prepare for Shabbos. But if you're going to say that it's forbidden for him to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, but the kemach itself does not become forbidden, so then you don't have to sell it to anybody else. Someone else could just go use it and prepare it for you without you selling it to someone else. This is the gersa that we have in our Gemara. But there's another gersa here in our Gemara. If you look at the second half of the Tosfos, I Amrit, in the bottom of the Amud, so Tosfos brings the gersa of the halachas gedolos. And he's gersa as follows. If you're going to say that it's also for him to cook, and the flour is not also, so then so then you can sell your kemach to someone else. In other words, according to the halachas gedolos' opinion, if the kemach is not also, you're going to have to sell your kemach to someone else for him to be allowed to cook it for you. You can't just allow him to take it and do it for you without selling it to him. And then it's not going to help you to sell it to someone else, because Tosfos says if the kemach itself is actually also to be used, so then how does it help to sell it to him? It's the kemach became also. Selling it to someone else is not going to change the status of that isser. That's how he's guided in our Gemara. But according to Rashi, even though there is an isser on the kamach, but nevertheless, they were lenient that if you sell it to someone else, so that will be enough to be a reminder that you're not usually allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, and to remember that you made a mistake here, that you didn't make the Erev Tavshilin. So those are the two gersas here in the Gemara. So the Gemara brings a raya, Toshamat, says, Nabraisa, Mishalei Niach, Eruv Tavshilin. Someone did not make an Erev Tavshilin. You shouldn't bake, you shouldn't cook, you shouldn't insulate food, prepare it for Shabbos, not for himself, not for others. And others are not allowed to cook for him. So what does he do? He sells his flour to someone else, and then the other person is allowed to bake for him and cook for him. So Shmamina, from here we see that hu nesar, that he's not allowed to cook, but the kimchay nesar, and according to Rashi's gersa, even his flour is also aser, and therefore he has to sell it to someone else. Or according to Tosfos' gersa, you guide us over here, ve'en kimchay nesar, and therefore you could sell it to someone else, and he could do it for you. Shmamina, this is a raya. Another question was asked. Ovar ve'ofamai. If you did not make an Erev Tavshilin, and you went ahead and you baked anyways for Shabbos, so what's now? Are you allowed to use this on Shabbos? Toshema, I'll bring you a raya from this same Beitza here. Mishalei niach erev tafshilin. You did not make an erev tafshilin. So kates otherwise. So what do? Makna kimchila chayim. You have to sell your kemach to someone else. V'chayim oifen loy umevashlen loy, and someone else will cook for you and bake for you. Now, the isa. If it would be true that if you went ahead and cooked anyways, that it's mutter for it to be eaten on Shabbos. So listni of avafa. Why doesn't it mention in the Beitza here this scenario? If you went and cooked anyways, that you can eat it on Shabbos. The Beitza is looking to tell you situations of what you could do that you should still be able to eat your food on Shabbos. So why doesn't the Beitza mention this? That b'diavad you would be allowed to eat it if you cooked it. And for the Gemara, Omer Avada Bar Masna, there's no raya from here because Tane takante de teire katani. This Tane is looking for an eitzah for this person that didn't make the erev tafshilin in a way that it's mutter, that he could sell his flour to someone else. But takante de isura loikatani, a takana, which is something that was done bidi yeved, that you weren't supposed to be cooking for Shabbos, that then after the fact you can eat it, that he doesn't mention. So even if it would be allowed, he wouldn't mention this. Toshema, come and hear a raya from another Beitza. Misheniach eruv tafshilin, someone that made an erev tafshilin, so then areza oife umevashul umatmani can bake and cook and insulate the food prepared for Shabbos. If the erev tafshilin, the food of the erev tafshilin itself, he wants to eat it up, parashus biyada, you can eat it. But achloi at shaloi yafa. But if he ate it before he baked for Shabbos, and the Bachir adds at shaloi bishul, before he cooked for Shabbos, or actually hitman, before he insulated the food for Shabbos. So now he doesn't have any of the erev tafshilin left. So he can't do anything he needs for Shabbos. Not for himself and not for others. And others can't cook and bake for him. He could cook for yontif itself. And if he has leftovers, he'll have leftovers for Shabbos. However, he should not play a trick and cook extra for Yontiv, and really he has Shabbos in mind, and he says that he's doing it for Yontiv, and he'll have leftovers for Shabbos. He has to cook only for Yontiv. If there happens to be leftovers, he has leftovers. V'im had him, if he did make this trick and he cooked extra, and really he's having Shabbos in mind, asa. So then it's forbidden to be used on Shabbos. So what do you see over here? That harama, when a person did not make the erev tafshilin and he's playing a trick to cook for yontif extra and really he's doing it for Shabbos, you're not allowed. You can't use it even b'diavad. So isn't this a raya to the question that we had regarding a person that didn't make an erev tafshilin, whether b'diavad, if he cooked, he can use it. So here we see that you can't. Omer Rav Ashi, so Rav Ashi says there's no raya from here. Harama kamret, you're bringing me a raya from this case of harama where a person is making a trick. Shani harama da achmiru be'rabanan tfei mimezid. When it comes to harama, the chachama were actually more stringent with this person than a person that b'mezid intentionally went and cooked on Yom Tov Shabbos without an erev tafshilin. And the reason is, as Rashi explains, because when it comes to a person that's doing it b'mezid and he's a rasha, nobody's going to learn from him, number one. Number two, he himself will come to do tshuva. He'll realize he did something wrong. Harama is different. Harama is cooking for Yontif, and he's saying that I'm really cooking for Yontif, but he's having in mind Shabbos. So first of all, others will think, it's allowed to be done that way. And also, he himself won't come to do tshuva so fast. He's going to say to himself, look, I really cooked for Yontif. So therefore, there adarab, Chacham will geize even more that b'diyavad there should be yasser. But when it was done b'mezid, not necessarily did they make that gzeira. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak gives a different answer. Hamani chanan yehi v'aliba de beishamai. This Beitza here that says that b'diyavad you can't use the food you cooked on Yontif for Shabbos without an erev tafshilin, we can say that Beitza goes specifically according to Chananya, according to Beishamai. And in this Beitza we'll see here that Beishamai is more machmer regarding erev tafshilin b'chlal, and therefore we could say that this chumrah of this Beitza as well is only according to Beishamai. The Tanya, we learned in the Beitza. Chananya said, Beishamai says as follows: Ein oifen, you can't bake from Yom Tov to Shabbos, elam can erev b'pas, unless you make an erev with bread, which is a baked item. Vei mevashlen, and you can't cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, elam can erev b'tavshel, unless you make an erev with an item which is cooked. And vein taimnin, and you can't insulate the food from Yom Tov to Shabbos, elam can hoyechamin tmunim erev Yom Tov, unless you also made the erev tavshilin and you insulated food for the purpose of the kavod Shabbos or the kavod Yom Tov. So what do we see over here? The Beishamai is very machmir by erev tavshilin. Whatever malacha you want to do, you have to make the erev tavshilin in that similar thing: cooking, baking, insulating. Beis Hillel say ma'arev b'tavshil echad. You make the erev tavshilin with one tavshil, And Vaisu Bekol Tzarkai. And you can do all the malachas that you have to do on Yontif for Shabbos. So here we see that Beis Shammai is very machmer regarding how Erev Tavshilin is made. So therefore we could also say that regarding B'diavad, that Braisa before that says that you can't use it if you didn't make an Erev Tavshilin, maybe that's only Beis Shammai. Tanan, or others are good, is Toshema, another ayah, Hama'asa Peireisav. So this is regarding Maisris, which you're not allowed to take Maisris on Shabbos. But if someone B'diavad took his Maisris b'Shabbos, so B'Sheigig, if it was done by mistake, Yoichal, he can eat the fruits. B'Mezid, if it was done intentionally, Lo Yoichal. So then you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. So we can bring an ayah from here and say the same thing applies to someone that forgot to make the Erev Tavshilin. That if he cooked from Yom Tov to Shabbos, we'll apply the same thing, that B'Sheigig, he can eat it, and b'mezid lo yoichal. So the Gemara, no, that's different. Over there, the case is that he has other fruits to eat from. He's not going to be stuck with nothing. So therefore, over there it says that b'mezid he shouldn't eat. But maybe over here, if he didn't make an Erev Tavshilin and he can't cook anything from Yom Tov to Shabbos, he's not going to have anything from Shabbos. Maybe over here, b'diavad they will matter. Toshema, in the continuation of that Mishnah, it says, Hamad bul keilav b'Shabbos. Someone is toivel his dishes on Shabbos, which you're also not allowed. You're being mesaken it. So b'sheigeg, if it was done by mistake, yishtamish ben, you can use them on Shabbos. B'mezid, it was done intentionally, lo yishtamish ben, you should not use them. So again, we can compare and say the same thing as over here by b'diavad, cooking without an Erev Tavshilin. So the Gemara, no, again, lo tzriche, the islay mani achlina. Over there, in that case, the reason why b'mezid they didn't allow him to use it is because he has other dishes, he has other kelim. Yinami after b'sheila, or when it comes to kelim, it's something you can borrow. It's easier to borrow to be able to use, whereas food is not so easy to borrow. Toshama, another ayat. Hamavashal b'Shabbos b'sheigig yoichal b'mezid lo yoichal. On Shabbos, the halacha is if someone cooks on Shabbos b'sheigig, so you can eat it on Shabbos. But if you b'mezid cooked on Shabbos, so then you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. So we should apply the same thing over here regarding Yontif. So the Gemara, no, there's no raya. Isura, the Shabbos shani. The Isur of Shabbos is much more chomer, as Rashi here says. It's an Isur skila, and therefore over there could be a knas chachamim made for the mezid. Whereas in Yontif, where it's not the same level of an Isur, and cooking from Yontif to Shabbos, over here we're only talking about an Isur midrabbana. It's not even an Isur minatayra at all. So over here, it weren't geyser necessarily. Sagt the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah, Beis Shammai oimrim shnei tavshilin. You need to have 2 tavshilin for the Erev Tavshilin. And Beis Hillel said only 1. Sagt the Gemara, Masnisin, the loike hai Tana. Our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of this Tana here. The Tanya and Abraisi we learned on Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Meidim, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, al shnei tavshilin shetzarech. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that you have to have 2 tavshilin for the Erev Tavshilin. Regarding what case was their argument? Al dog Beitza shalav, when you have a fish that was cooked with an egg on top of it. Beis Shammai says that doesn't count as 2, so you still need 2. So you're going to have to get a second one. Beis Hillel say that 1 is enough. In other words, this one that you have here, the fish and the egg on top of it, this is good enough and you don't need anything else. That's the case that they were arguing about. B'shavin, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel will agree, Shem pirper beitza, that if you had a hard-boiled egg and you crumbled it, and v'nasan, you mashed an egg, v'nasan l'techa dog, and you put it inside fish, and that's how you cook it. Oy sherisik kaflutais, or you cut pieces of kaflutais, some kind of a vegetable, into small pieces. It's leek, I believe, and you cut it into small pieces. Or Rashi here actually says mincer balaz. You have minced pieces of this leek, and you cook it together with the fish. So then shehein shnei tavshilin. That's certainly considered to be 2 different tavshilin that are being cooked together, but they're 2 tavshilin. So here in this braisa we see that everybody agrees that you have to have 2 tavshilin for the Erev Tavshilin. In our Mishnah, however, it said that Beis Hillel holds 1 is enough. So the Gemara Marave Hilchase Ketana Didan. The halacha is like the Tana of our Mishnah. Va'alibe the Beis Hillel. And according to Beis Hillel, that you just need 1 tafshil, not 2. However, as I mentioned in the previous daf, our minig is, as Taisus brings over here, B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam, to make 2 tafshilin, because 1 is enough if it's a tafshil for cooking, but then you have to have a baked good for being able to bake. So therefore, as our minig today is, we take a matzah, which will be able to stay fresh for the time that you need it, for the first, second day yontif, and then and also another cooked item. That's how we make the Erev Tavshilin today. Said in the Mishnah, Ochloi oisha avad, the Erev Tavshilin that was eaten or lost, harezel lo yavashel olav. You don't have it anymore, you can't cook with it. You can't prepare from Yontif to Shabbos. Amar Abaye, so Abaye said, Naktinon, we know the halacha is that hischel b'isasa, if he already began preparing his dough for what he needs for Shabbos, and v'nechal eruva, in the middle way through, the Erev got eaten up, goimer. Once he started doing already the preparation, he could already continue and finish preparing what he needs to have for Shabbos.